Welcome, everybody. This council meeting of January 18th, 2022 is called to order. Miguel, would you lead us in Pledge of Allegiance? And everybody else, please mute your mics. Miguel, you had your mic muted. Do we want to do this again, or are we okay?
No, I think we're okay, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
That was muted. Shoot.
It happens all the time in these meetings. All right. Okay, Donna, will you do a roll call, please?
Yes, I will. Councilmember Sherman. But you have to unmute.
Here.
There you go. Councilmember Bode.
Here.
Mayor Inesco.
Here.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Here.
Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schmidt.
Here.
Councilmember McDowell.
Present.
All right. Do we have any late changes to the agenda? Hearing none. At this time, I would like to remind the members of the public they can make comments during the public comment period, as well as any item listed on the business agenda or action agenda. When making public comment, you will need to raise your hand electronically on the Zoom app, state your full name and whether you reside in the city limits within Mason County or reside elsewhere. Option 1, join our Zoom meeting by clicking on the link that is displayed on the city's webpage. The link is listed on the agenda and minutes page under the tab that says more. Option 2, you can email our city manager, Jeff Knighton. Option 3, you can call Jeff's office phone. Is your phone forwarded, Jeff?
It's not, but my cell phone number should be available as well.
Okay, call Jeff's cell phone number. Both the email address and phone number are displayed on the screen of Mason Web TV streaming video. All right. Do we have any council member board reports to share? I unofficially attended the transit board today, but that's all I have to say. Anybody else?
I had my left board meeting the other morning. It consists of about 4 minutes of business and then we're done. So we've been doing over phone during this COVID issues. So anyway, I attended that.
Great. Anyone else? All right. Has everyone had a chance to read the consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
I move to accept the consent agenda as published.
Can we have a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Donna, do we have anyone interested in making public comment tonight?
Let me take a look here, Mr. Mayor.
Right. All right.
No, we do not.
All right. We have no business items scheduled, so we'll move on to our action agenda. City Engineer Ken Gill is going to share information on a local road safety plan.
Good evening, Council. It's good to see you back in Zoomville. I was hoping to keep the in-person on a roll, but yeah, I just can't win every fight, I guess. But oh well. This is third time around for several of you, second time around for two of you. But tonight you get the real deal. Ryan Shea is here with J-Car Jewel to give us a presentation, and I will turn it over to Ryan.
Thanks, Ken. Good evening. As Ken mentioned, this is the third time we've kind of presented some of this information to some of you, and Ken walked through some highlights a couple of weeks ago while I was battling symptoms. I don't think it was COVID, but anything might be COVID. And as Ken mentioned, we were finding out that our our upcoming baby is going to be a girl, so we're excited about that.
Okay.
Thanks. So just a quick, intro of me. I was really excited when Ken reached out to our firm to help with this report. I'm from the area. I grew up in Tenino, went to school in Lacey at St. Martin's, and have been in Shelton throughout my life. My aunt and uncle lived there most of my childhood, and I worked at the lumber mill a summer. So I definitely have been in and out of the community most of my life and have always lived nearby. So it's been a lot of fun to get to work with Ken in the city and kind of identifying some safety improvements and ways that we can kind of improve the safety of the city. So as Ken mentioned, actually, Donna, can I share my screen? Is that to show okay. So can everybody see the presentation? Okay. So this is largely the same slideshow that we presented last year and then again 2 weeks ago. And my intention is to kind of just hit the highlights here. But by all means, I can stop and add detail as appropriate. So what we have worked on is preparing what's called a local road safety plan. And at its core, it is a data-driven analysis of existing safety data that then allows the jurisdiction to make informed decisions about what the overlying safety problems in the community are, and then make recommendations on how to address those specific issues. And then this document is great to inform the city on projects that will help make meaningful change to safety, but it's also really critical for being well positioned and competitive for safety funding, which is a huge asset for any community, and especially communities that have to stretch every dollar. So it's been really a focus of ours to get this plan strong and competitive and ready for the impending grant application deadline, which is in early March. One of the core elements of the local road safety plan is to focus really on not all the crashes within a jurisdiction, but the fatal crashes and the serious injury crashes, which collectively are considered the ones that result in the highest threat to human life. And beyond even the fatal and serious injury crashes, WSDOT is especially focused on what they call systemic problems. So the idea behind this plan is to really focus on the crashes that did happen. What themes can we pull from those crashes and what commonalities exist? And then let's look for other areas in the city that have those same core elements. And then we can identify solutions beyond where the known crashes have happened and try to get in front of future crashes in similar locations. And so that overall, approach drove all the analysis that we did. But there is room in these plans for spot improvements. And as we'll talk about in a little bit, we definitely solicited input from the community and the staff and you at the council to figure out some specific locations that might also be worth including. And the plan kind of has both elements covered. So this is a map that shows the last 5 years of crash data in the city. The red spots indicate areas of higher density of crashes. And as you would expect, these crashes largely fall where the volume is highest. Across the city, there were 16 fatal and serious injury crashes, 2 of which were fatal and 14 which were serious injury. And then skipping kind of along a few slides, this what we learned right away, this is a map that shows the 16 that are fatal and serious, kind of where they occurred. And right away, what stood out to us was that of the 16 fatal and serious injury crashes, 10 of them involved a pedestrian or a bicyclist, which is those are at-risk users of the roadway. They're a lot more vulnerable, but still, this was a startling percentage of the overall crashes and quickly became a focus of the continued evaluation. So what we went through and we identified globally what were the common risk factors among the serious fatal crashes. And ultimately, we found that not only was ped bike one of the main factors, it really was the only common factor amongst these crashes. So we kind of shifted our focus from looking at the broader spectrum of what might be causing these crashes, instead looked at where are all of the bike ped crashes occurring, if that's the common thread, let's look at solving those issues, everywhere. And so as you can see on the screen, taking all of the bike and ped crashes in the data set, we kind of identified 6 key corridors in the city where these crashes were most prominent. And those became our study corridors, or our high priority corridors. And they would be, they're listed there. So in the local road safety plan, we have in chapter 5 of that plan, we go through and talk about in detail each of these corridors, the specific crash characteristics that we saw, and then the recommended countermeasures to kind of speak to those crash trends. In addition to these high priority corridors, like I mentioned earlier, we also solicited input from the community and from city staff, as well as the council. And we received a host of additional concern areas that didn't immediately pop up in our data set. And these are all also included in the local road safety plan. And as with the priority corridors, each of these individual concerns is identified, discussed, and then potential countermeasures are also identified in the plan. It was really great to get a collection of feedback from both the local citizen level as well as administrators and the council. It's important to make sure we're getting everything in here. And the crash data is a great starting point, but it doesn't always capture near misses, or potentially it doesn't even capture all of the crashes. So we were encouraged to get as much input as we did from different concerned entities. We have some slides in here that talk about some of the countermeasures that we've included in the plan. I'll kind of quickly skip through those. And then here, this is this slide and the subsequent 2 slides are really the countermeasures that we identified in the plan. And we broke them into 3 tiers. And I know Ken kind of went over this 2 weeks ago. The tiers are more an organizational element and not necessarily a hierarchy of priority. But these 2 crashes that are identified in the tier 1, these are the 2 locations where we had a fatal collision. And so they kind of are set aside in their own tier simply by the fact that they had an existing fatal crash occur at them. And then, the tier 2 and tier 3 tables identify additional improvements. And there's not a lot of distinction in priority between tier 2 and tier 3. It was kind of an organizational metric, where tier 3 is more areas where we may want to do a little bit more study before executing a specific improvement. It is not to say that those projects are less important, just that maybe the solution at those locations is a little bit less clear at this time. So anyway, yeah, so we have these 3 tables of potential countermeasures. And I think, as Ken talked about in the last meeting, once we have this plan approved, we are then going to sit down and refine cost estimates for a package of improvements that we're then going to submit to the grant program in the hopes of getting funding to then execute all those improvements. So I think for tonight, in addition to having the plan approved, we're interested in hearing any thoughts that you have about specific projects that you'd like to make sure are included in this initial application to the grant, or just any thoughts in general about the plan. And with that, I guess I would kick it back to if there's any questions or comments or feedback related to the plan itself or the projects that we would look to advance as we make our application to the grant funding. Oh, go ahead. I see that Joe has a hand up.
Yeah, what was the specific grant program? Was it state funds or federal funds? Do you know?
It's state funds. It's the local road safety plan, but I believe they're state funds, Councilmember Schmidt.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely a WSDOT administered program. And actually one of the requirements to apply for funding is to have a local road safety plan adopted. It's a good plan to have anyway, but it's specifically necessary to get at this funding source.
Any other questions? Donna, has anyone signed up for public comment?
Let me take a look here. No, Mr. Mayor, there is no one indicating they want to make a public comment.
May we have a reading of resolution number 1222-1221?
Yes. Resolution number 1222-1221, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Shelton, Washington, authorizing approval of a local road safety plan prepared by SCJ Alliance.
All right. And do we have a motion? Can we get a motion?
I move to adopt resolution number 1222-1221 and the local roads safety plan.
Second.
All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I do.
Okay.
Is this, these projects all going to be lump summed into one grant, or are they going to be split apart?
Ken, do you want to take that?
Sure. The question I heard was, are we going to apply for everything, or are we going to do things separately? And the grant is set up so that you can apply for system-wide. So a bunch of the same features all around the city. For example, the flashing beacons example that I talked about last time, putting flashing beacons all at various locations, or they have spot locations. The project that was brought up last time by Councilmember Schmidt was, potential studying for a roundabout at First and Railroad. So it's really up to you guys. What I'm recommending is a kind of a suite of projects that recognizes the crash data, the input we took from the school district, and then the input that we took from our residents and from you guys. Try to attempt to capture and show that we listen to our participants in the plan. Does that answer your question?
It did. Thank you, Ken.
Do we have any other questions or comments? No? We have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 1222-1221 and the local road safety plan as presented. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item is council committee assignments. City Manager Jeff Knighton will share information on the assignment process. Exciting stuff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council. Tonight, we have consideration of the council committee assignments. I heard from members of the city council about what assignments they'd either like to retain or which ones they would like to keep. And late last week, I emailed council an updated list with council committee assignments filled in, and we tried to make sure that we could meet all the scheduling requirements for each council member, what their preferences were or are to be included. As you'll see from the one I emailed to you late last week, for the Economic Development Council, we have Deputy Mayor Schmidt. We have a new committee this year that was put in place, recommended as a best practice for our investments, for city investments with across all of our funds. The Investment Advisory Committee, that's new for 2022. That will probably meet on a quarterly schedule, but it will be up to the members of that committee at the first meeting. The members are myself, the finance director, and two members of council, or excuse me, one member of council and one alternate. So that one currently doesn't have anybody filled in. So I'd like a recommendation for that tonight if we could get that. And then for the LTAC, the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, that's traditionally held by the mayor, and Mayor Inesco is scheduled there. Councilmember Sherman is scheduled for the Mason County Criminal Justice Working Team, and Deputy Mayor Schmidt for MACECOM, the Legislative and Governing Board. The next one down there is the Emergency Food and Shelter Committee. Unfortunately, that committee has not met and isn't active. So we're striking that from the list, but we are going to have the duties taken over by the Emergency Planning Committee, and that is something that all of you are a part of. the entire council is a part of that. Councilmember Gutierrez, did you have a question?
You're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted, Councilmember.
I wanted to volunteer to take up that committee and make it active again, if that's okay.
Sure, we can fill you in there. Let's see.
Are we talking about the one that we were going to strike or the emergency planning committee?
Yeah. The one that we're going to strike, I thought it was something that we actually still need.
Okay.
Do we even know who was involved in that committee? I've never been to a meeting in 4 years.
Yeah, that we don't, but we can certainly start it from scratch at this point.
Okay.
And let's see here. Next, we have the left board, which Councilmember McDowell mentioned earlier, a little bit earlier in her board report. And she is scheduled to retain that along with the Mason County Board of Health meeting. Let's see, the Mason County EMS and Trauma Council is Deputy Mayor Schmidt, and then Mason Transit Authority would be Mayor Anisco. Councilmember Peterson would also retain the Peninsula Regional Transportation Planning Organization meeting. And then, as I mentioned, we have the Emergency Planning Committee, which all of you are already involved in or will be involved in, and the Shelton Metropolitan Parks District Board. That one you are all involved in, but we'll select a president and a secretary or clerk, I believe, at the first meeting of the SMPD board in March. So the ones that we don't have individuals scheduled for are the Housing and Behavioral Health Advisory Committee and the Opioid Stakeholders Committee. So Councilmember Bode, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I would jump on the Housing and Behavioral Health.
Okay.
And I would also jump into the investment one as well.
Okay. Sorry, I'm writing slow here. Investment. Okay. So the only one that we have left over that nobody has spoken for yet is the Opioid Stakeholders meeting. And I'm curious if anybody would any.
I'd jump on that as well.
Okay. So either myself or Donna, one of us will make sure that that you get all the information regarding that. So with that, are there any questions or concerns about what committees you're assigned to? I'd be happy to answer those and we can move forward.
Nope. And well, we begin invitations for the LTAC meetings. I don't see if it's on here. Okay.
We will. Deputy Mayor, or excuse me, Councilmember Peterson.
Hard habit to break. I was just going to suggest that we may also want to look at either choosing to assign alternates for all of the committees or allowing that to be handled by a designated council member in an ad hoc fashion as those things may come up. For example, I know there's at least one meeting this summer I won't be able to attend. Deputy Mayor Schmidt was kind enough to cover that for me last year, but what process we want to use for alternates for those dates.
I can be an alternate for the Housing Behavioral Health Advisory Board since I've been on it for 4 years.
I'll be glad to be an alternate for the opioid. That kind of goes in hand with the Mason County Board of Health.
Okay, and Deputy Mayor Schmidt was previously alternate to the Peninsula Regional Transportation Organization. Is that something that you'd like to continue?
Yeah, I'm happy to fill in where needed, but I know we also have a couple council members, I don't believe, that are assigned to a committee. So I would like to give a fair opportunity to share some of that with the others.
I think we do now have council members assigned to every council member is at least on one committee. So that's good.
Yeah, and I was thinking that the outside committees such as Peninsula Regional Transportation Organization, Mason Transit, those ought to have alternates. So is there anyone interested in being an alternate to the Mason Transit Authority?
I can take that if someone else wishes to.
Okay, was that Councilmember Peterson?
Councilmember Gutierrez has a question.
I just wanted to alternate myself as well.
Okay. Okay, so we will get these this filled out with the information I heard tonight and send it back around to all of you with my weekly update on Friday, just to make sure we heard everything correctly, and get your thumbs up on the final version of this. The other thing we'll do is we'll add an alternate column onto this page so that it's easy to see who's the alternate for which committee.
Can I ask one question, Mr. Knighton?
Sure.
I'm recording all of this, writing it down as you go, and I don't have anyone down for the Investment Advisory Committee as an alternate. Is there anyone? Did I miss that?
For that one, because it's an in-house committee, I don't think we need an alternate for that. If Councilmember Bode is not able to attend, we can just reschedule that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then if the council would like to think ahead for around March, maybe the Parks president position will be coming up here in a couple months. Mm-hmm. If anybody's interested in that, if not, I can do it.
Yeah,
and I see Miguel's got his hand up there.
Yeah, and we can talk about that. I believe it's the first meeting in March, and the full council participates. But we are going to get the Emergency Planning Committee actually stood up and running. So you'll all attend those, and we'll hold those similar to the way we do the Shelton Mason or Shelton Metropolitan Parks District.
I've always kind of wondered what that committee's purpose was, if this was something we just fell into like in a county-wide local emergency planning group or something, but this sounds like it's an actual city-led planning group.
So what, funny you should ask, but I have on my update this evening, the local hazard mitigation planning efforts in partnership with Mason County. And what that is, it puts together a Shelton annex to the hazard mitigation plan, which is a requirement for funding from federal sources like FEMA. It needs to be updated every 5 years, and I believe it's been a little bit longer than that. But there'll be a staff member detailed to attend the hazard mitigation planning efforts with the county. And that staff member will come back and brief the Emergency Planning Committee on those efforts and make sure that we include your input into that planning effort.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Moving on. Jeff, will you give us a city manager report?
Sure. So as we all know, we had a bunch of rain on top of a bunch of snow. And I saw an article in the paper over the weekend, or maybe very early this week, about 5.84 inches of rain fell in Mason County, and it's causing a lot of problems for people in the northern part of our community. So we want to be respectful of that and do everything we can to help our neighbors. But during that event, our wastewater treatment plant is designed to handle 4.4 million gallons a day of wastewater. And on Friday, I believe, the week of that rain event, it handled 8 million gallons. And on Saturday, it handled 9 million gallons. And we did all of that. I shouldn't include myself in that, but the folks at the wastewater treatment plant did all of that with no violations of our permit, which is an outstanding feat. We're all very proud of them, and they should be absolutely proud of themselves. That was quite a rain event we had. Hopefully we won't have to be dealing with it again, but I'm sure we will. Prior to that, we had the snow and ice event for almost a week before the rain started. And our crews worked 24 hours a day. Our road superintendent, Mike Alba, was outstanding, getting to places, trouble spots that needed help, and wanted to recognize his efforts and his team's efforts in making sure our roads were as safe as they possibly could be. That's pretty much all I have for you this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Jeff, the 9 million gallons, that's probably mostly due to connections to our stormwater that, or sewer that should be connected to our stormwater, correct?
That's correct.
And we've been doing smoke tests. How is that going?
We haven't started the smoke tests yet.
Okay.
We want to do a pretty extensive public outreach program before smoke starts coming out of downspouts, because that tends to alarm folks. But we will start doing that just to identify those connection problems and then do everything we can to help people fix those. Other issues that are involved in that are sewer pipes that are just old and they're broken. And we did a really large rehab project in downtown, just north of Railroad several years ago. There are several other basins that need that type of work, and it's not inexpensive, but we are working on those, get those fixed as soon as we can. But yeah, that's a lot of the water gets in that way. Our city engineer, Ken Gill, with the help of our partners at Sierra Pacific, identified a big influx, an area where water was coming from, and they helped us, they being Sierra Pacific, helped us get that fixed really quickly, and we greatly appreciate that because that helps out everybody when we're talking about our wastewater treatment.
Great. Anyone have any questions for City Manager? Does the council have any new items for discussion?
Just real quickly, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Sure.
Sorry, and I typical of me, I forget to grab this piece of paper right at the end. But we do have the upcoming looking ahead. Next Tuesday, we'll be talking about the downtown street trees. We have the arborist report that I will make sure you get before that study session. We have the leadership breakfast with our county and port partners coming up. And then at your next meeting, we will have the design contracts for the Safe Routes to School and for Brockdale. And then a resolution updating our master fee schedule with some of the new items that we have being added. And then finally on your action agenda, because there was no business agenda tonight, the only thing that's there is the agreement with our customer service bargaining partners. So that that's what's coming up, and make sure to get that published and get that information out to the community so they can have input if they would like to.
Cool. Now, do we have any new items for discussion? No? All right. Our next council meeting will be Tuesday, February 1st at 6 p.m. We also have a study session on January 26th at 6 p.m. This meeting is adjourned at 6:34 p.m.